Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Suzanne Clark, President and CEO of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for joining today's Innovation Ecosystem event hosted by the Chamber's Global Innovation Policy Center, or GIPC. This is the latest in a series of conversations GIPC has hosted around multi-stakeholder ecosystems that support and deliver American innovation, creativity, and craftsmanship. Over the past several weeks, GIPC has convened leaders from government, academia, and the private sector to better understand how different industries create the conditions for innovation to thrive as big ideas turn into reality. Today's session is fittingly titled The Common Thread. This afternoon, we'll discuss how industries that may seem to have little in common, like movies or medicine, telecommunications, and consumer products, often actually follow very similar pathways to develop ideas and deliver breakthrough products and services. We'll also discuss some of the very critical economic principles that support these ecosystems and promote innovation, namely the role of intellectual property rights. To help us explore these topics, I'd like to welcome Dr. Michelle McMurray-Heath. She is the president and CEO of the Biotechnology Innovation Organization, or BIO, and I'm also proud to call her my friend. Michelle, when we spoke a few months ago, the world was still waiting for the first COVID-19 vaccine to be authorized for emergency use. Today, several have been approved and are increasingly reaching people in America and around the world. But as you wrote in a recent piece for The Economist, oddly, the policies that enabled firms to produce life-saving technologies at historic speeds are now under attack, with some organizations and countries pushing to nullify the very intellectual property protections that made the innovations possible. That issue is at the core of what brings us together again this afternoon. It's vital that global policymakers and thought leaders truly understand the multi-stakeholder innovation ecosystem and the critical role of intellectual property rights. We have a lot we want to ask, so let's jump right in. So let's see, Michelle, starting with, what do BIO's members have in the life sciences innovation ecosystem? And what are the roles of other stakeholders in advancing innovation for patients in need, from basic science to the commercialization of vaccines, therapeutics, and more?
Well, first of all, Suzanne, it's a pleasure to join you again and nice to see you. This is such a critical and important topic right now. And at BIO, we see it from lots of different vantage points. So BIO represents over 1,000 biotechnology companies in the food and agriculture, biopharma, and environmental spaces. And over 70% of our companies are actually the small companies, although we have large ones as well. So we see that whole ecosystem of R&D where you have, sometimes these small, scrappy companies that have no products on the market, but are really trying to challenge science with a bold new idea and take a huge risk, financial, personal, and scientific, to try to get that idea to patients and to consumers. And then you see the mid-sized companies who have perhaps had a success or two and are learning how to evolve their research and development model. And then, of course, our larger members who are really out there around the globe, making sure that they know how to manufacture and distribute these very critical products to consumers in every corner of the earth. So it's a very interesting pathway, and all of these players have incredibly important roles in our R&D ecosystem.
One of the things that I think is confusing about this topic is that it looks like things like this COVID vaccine happen overnight. There's this breathtaking speed to market that was really a remarkable feat on behalf of our scientists. But the truth is that even that breakthrough technology is rooted in long-term investments, right? And long-term R&D. And so understanding the balance of that in the ecosystem, I think, is important. Can you talk a little bit about where the innovation and investment comes from and where the risk of failure is the highest and the role it plays?
Yes. Well, risk is ripe in science. It's estimated that 9 out of 10 products that are developed failed. You only have to look at our pipeline for COVID to kind of see that in action. While we've had a lot of attention on these almost miraculous seeming vaccines that came out in record time, you have to look at what's behind that. First of all, the 30 years of research that went into developing the mRNA platforms, both academic and government research, but also a lot of private sector research as well. And then there's the fact that within 13 months, our company started over 960 different research and development programs to fight or stop COVID, over 200 vaccine candidates. 90% of these research and development programs were started by small companies who were risking the farm to try to do something to help mankind. And what are we hearing about? We're hearing about the trickle out of the other end. Most of those 200 vaccine candidates will never see the light of day, will never reach a patient, may never even reach a clinical trial. But I'm still so glad that we had that investment of human capital, of ingenuity and creativity put to this task, because it was all of those people trying to reach the finish line that got us there. And it's incredibly important that we have that kind of response. And that response comes from investment. We have, investors that participate in every stage of our ecosystem, all across that pipeline of small, medium, and large companies. And then our larger companies are going back and also partnering with some of our smaller companies and investing as well. All of that investment rests upon the potential promise, and it's only potential because it's such a high risk, but that potential promise of if you are successful and you do change lives, that there will be a reward at the end of the day.
And when you think about this, the other important component I talked about a little bit in my opening is intellectual property rights. And the Chamber has always been a strong proponent of a strong intellectual property rights system. But help us understand the role that IP plays in this innovation ecosystem.
It's critical. It's interesting. I've had the opportunity to work across many different medical ecosystems, and in the medical device arena, where it's much more difficult to safeguard IP, you see it in a decrease in the investment and the decrease in openness of investors to really pour seed money into those burgeoning young companies that have those really cutting edge new ideas. And so that IP is so important for protecting that investment, making sure that if it makes it all the way through the clinical trial pipeline, all the way out to patients, that it will create a product that can hopefully recoup some of that investment. It's gotten quite a lot of attention worldwide because we think IP is the only key to developing a drug or a product, and that's not the case. Particularly if you look in the realm of vaccines or other biologics, it is so notoriously difficult to get these things right, to manufacture them, that we have limited capacity globally to even build these vaccines. And so IP is important in terms of getting and attracting that early seed investment, but it's not sufficient to actually deliver a product to patients.
I think that's such an important point. Your industry is playing a critical role in getting us out of this pandemic, and they're lucky to have you leading the way. And we're lucky to have you join us today. So thank you so much for all you're doing for our country, for global health, and thanks for being with us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Hi, I'm Ruth Vitale, CEO of Creative Future, and I'm here with Amoni Oboli, international filmmaker.
Hi, Ruth.
Hi, Amoni. This is our fireside chat, but hopefully sometime soon we can do this in person.
I'm looking forward.
Me too. Amoni, let's just dive right in. Let's talk about your journey to becoming an actor and a filmmaker. What brought you to the film and television industries? We all know it doesn't happen overnight.
Yep.
When you're in it, I came from, 30 years in the independent film business. So tell us about your journey.
Okay, so I I was an actor before I became a filmmaker. And ever since I was a little girl, like from age 4, I knew I wanted to be an actor because I was in every school play, I was in every church play, and I just really, really loved acting, right? By the time I was in high school, I was the head of the literary and debating society in my school. And that meant that I had to write, produce, and direct plays, right? At
whole
the time.
thing.
I'm sorry?
The whole thing.
Yes.
Everything from
Everything.
A to
At
Z.
the time, I didn't even know that's what I was doing, right? I just knew
Right.
it was my duty to present a play to the parents teachers on Parents Teachers Day, right? So
Right.
I would literally write it, get my fellow pupils together, produce the whole thing, and then present it. What I didn't know was I was preparing myself for my future, you see. So by the time I was in university, my first year in university, some of my friends had gone to be part of the film industry, and they came back to school, and that's all they could talk about. And I was just so wowed. It was like, that's what I want to do. I want to act. And then by the following semester, the holidays, I went with them, and I happened to, get some like tiny roles, like some walk-on roles in some projects, and it was so exciting. I really, really wanted to do it, right? But at some point, it started to clash with my school, so I had to make a choice if I was going to be in the movies or if I was going to complete my university education.
Right.
So of course, I completed my university education. I got married right after school, and I took like a 10 years break from the industry. Yeah.
You did?
I did. And then by the time I came back, of course, I was the new girl. Nobody remembered me from 10 years before, right? So it was a struggle to actually, get my foot back in the door and, become an actor again. So I remember writing scripts and literally giving the scripts to producers for free just to get a role. Because I'm not kidding. Like, I'll write a whole script and give it to a producer and say, you know what? Here, don't pay me. Just give me a role in the movie.
That's incredible, but
Yeah.
it speaks to your dedication to, and your like inner passion to be in the business.
Yes.
Because being in the business, I know, it doesn't happen overnight, and
No,
you
it doesn't.
be single-minded about it.
Yeah.
Right.
So by the time I decided I wanted to be a filmmaker, it was a very scary thought because there are not that many female filmmakers, especially in Nigeria. At the time, there were just like maybe 3 or 4. So I was a bit worried because first I'm an actor, and then I'm a girl or I'm a woman. I'm like, I don't even know if they're going to accept me as a filmmaker. Nigeria is a very patriarchal society, so it was a bit of a scary thought. So I said to myself, I've gotten a lot of experience working on set as an actor, but I want some professional experience. So I took a short course at the New York Film Academy in New York on digital filmmaking. And it took me 4 years to make my first film after that. Because then I had to look for the money myself because no one was going to hire a rookie director. So I had to look for the money to produce my first film by myself. It took me 4 years.
And I do believe that people think that you can do it like it just happens overnight. I mean, I always say that I know that people don't think we shoot these movies on a flip phone in the backyard in an afternoon, but they don't really understand. It took you 4 years to get the first one done.
Yes, 4 whole years. Yeah, it was. And then I think I was overambitious as well. Because I mean, a first-time filmmaker, you should make like a cute little romantic comedy with like 5 people. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
just,
small.
Get your foot in the door. But I made a film that I needed to shoot on location in 3 states in Nigeria. So I had this huge cast and crew that I was carrying from one state to the other. Like, I broke down so many times, I would literally cry my eyes out.
And that costs, not only is it emotional distress, it's money and time and
There you go.
and hurting cats, right?
Exactly. Exactly. The honest truth is I started that project with not enough money to complete it. But I was just tired of waiting. I was tired. I was like, I really need to make my first film. I've been talking about it for 4 years. I'm like, I'm just going to make this film anyhow. So I started a project. I didn't even have money to complete it. But you know how the universe just aligns and everything falls into place when you finally decide that you're going to do something any which way. And then God just made it happen, right?
Yep.
before I finished the film, I had enough money for post-production.
See that it's true that I really do believe this about sort of fate and your, where your journey and your path goes, that if you say, I'm going to do this, somehow you will get it done. So tell me, you finish the film, then what?
I finished the film, and I thought it was really beautiful. It was my first film. It was my baby, right? I thought it was really beautiful. And then I said to myself, what is the one thing that will happen for this film that would launch me as a filmmaker, that would make my journey very popular and in people's faces immediately? Yes, I'm an actor, I'm a popular actor, but I'm not a popular filmmaker, right? So I said to myself, when you're a little girl and you do a project or you do something, you make a drawing, whatever, right? You want to show it to your parents because, once your parents say, oh, this is really nice, they give you their blessing, it's like a pat on the back, right? So who is this one person that I can show this movie to that would pat me in the back and it would launch my career? And I thought to myself, why not the president of the country?
That's a very good choice.
Another overambitious thought.
Really? Honestly, you are a woman not to be trifled with.
Another overambitious thought. So I spoke to a friend about it, and he was like, sure, why not? You know what? Write to the presidency, but don't write as you, write through an organization that you belong to. So I wrote through the Association of Movie Producers. Okay. And we sent a letter to the presidency. And I went on vacation with my family. We went to the US on vacation. And I totally forgot about it because it was just too ambitious. You know what I mean? But as God will have it, we were on vacation and I got a call that the president has agreed to do a presidential screening for your film.
Tip my hat to you.
I was like, what? Is this a prank call? Are you? And like, yeah, sure. I said to my kids, time to go home. Let's go back. So we came back. It was a grand event. We had like governors from different states, captains of industries, royalty. I was a guest at my own movie premiere. I was there at so our own equivalent of the White House is called Aso Rock Villa. So it was at a banquet hall at the villa. I went as a guest, by the way. I wasn't the organizer of my own movie premiere. So it was such a beautiful event. Everyone was wow. The president was like, oh, so we have such, interesting and, people who can do this kind of good work in this country. He was so proud, So for me, that was like a great launching pad because suddenly everyone is like, who's this filmmaker that got the first presidential screening? Like, how does that even happen? And
incredible.
I didn't even know him. He didn't know me. He actually thought it was a guy. That's great. How patriarchal Nigeria is. On the day of my premiere, he said to me, the president's in a holding room and he wants to see the director. So they called me to the holding room. And when I got in, he was like, oh, you're a woman? I was like,
all the better.
I'm a woman.
You know what I mean?
All the better. I was a man.
So do you spend your time between acting and directing? And listen, the film and TV industry are sort of, I always say, the first gig economy. You go from project to project to project, and in between you have no idea where you're going next.
Yep.
And you get presented with a bunch of options, hopefully, and then you decide which is the next step that you will take, right? So I want to just talk about Nigeria for a second because I read that that's called Nollywood, produces around 2,500 movies every year.
Yes.
Is that possible?
It is possible. It is possible. So how it works is not all those films are big screen movies, obviously.
Okay.
Right. So just a handful of them are big screen movies and actually make it to the cinema. Most of them are straight to home video type of films, right? And the vast majority of them go straight to home video, right? And they're not like big budget films. I mean, to be honest, if we're going to compare Hollywood and Nollywood, all our movies are probably low budget movies, right? Even the big screen movies are also low budget movies, right?
Right.
But then we have like real low budget movies. Those are the ones
which
that
go to streaming services and video and that kind of stuff.
And, you know, going to just like online streaming platforms and all of that. They're not getting to the big screens. These filmmakers don't spend so much money making those films because they're just trying to recoup on their investment and then get back to the next project. So those types of filmmakers churn out project after project after project after project.
Right.
One of such filmmakers could make 12 films or more in a year.
Yeah, that's crazy. But what's wonderful about the sort of productivity of Nigeria is that according to the International Trade Administration, they employ over 1 million people.
Yes.
And generate more than $7 billion for the economy.
Yes.
And that's what I think people forget in every country.
Yes.
Yes, we're a cultural driver. You know, we're cultural. People want to see movies and TV shows. But we're also a significant economic driver for the countries. And it accounts for 1.4% of the Nigerian GDP, which is incredible.
Which is more than most industries.
Yeah. And that's the point. It's like, we matter.
We you know, I say to the government all the time, every time I have a platform where I have to speak, where there are government officials or whatever, I'm like, you guys need to really look at our industry. You need to help us. We built this industry on our backs, pretty much, with no help whatsoever from the government. I said, it's time for you to help us. Can't you see what we're doing? I make one film and at least 100 people get fed from that one film.
Right.
At least 100 people are off the streets. Those people could be could become armed robbers. Those people could become prostitutes. But I am putting food on their table. So I am helping the economy. I'm helping the government with employment. And
it's skilled labor, right?
Exactly.
It's skilled labor. All right. I know that we have to wrap up soon and that we could have done this for like an hour.
I know.
Okay. So tell me a couple of things. One, how does copyright play a role in your work? What effect has piracy had on your ability to create films? And then finally, what are you working on next? Because everybody wants to know that.
So this piracy thing, we need an hour to talk about it.
I know.
We legit need an hour to talk about it because piracy is such a pain in the neck. My last film went on Netflix sometime during the pandemic. I think that was in May or so. May, yeah. It went on Netflix in May. Within one day, 24 hours, I was literally online. This is digital piracy now. I was literally online trying to shut down so many different sites who would like carry the whole film. It was crazy.
I know that to be true. Creative Future, our job is to advocate for strong copyright protections and to advocate against digital piracy. So my heart goes out to you. If it's any help to know, there are many organizations like my own around the globe that are trying very desperately to do this.
This would help a great deal. This would help a great deal because
you and I need to talk further. Just tell the audience what you're working on next, and we'll say goodbye to everybody.
Awesome. So I'm doing a remake. Actually, I'm not gonna call it a remake. It's kind of like a sequel to one of the very first films that was made in Nollywood. Back when I was a teenager, my first foray into the industry from university, I actually auditioned for that film and I wasn't picked. Right? And this is 20-something years later, and I get to be part of the producers and directors of this same film, the sequel.
That's fantastic.
It's beyond incredible, right?
All right. So we're going to wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And you and I need to talk further, okay?
Yes, please. Let's do that.
All right. And I want to thank the GIPC and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce for allowing Amoni and I to have this time to talk to audiences. So just please, everybody, know that what we do matters.
It does matter. Thank you so much. Thank
you. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I just wanted to say thank you to the GIPC and the US Chamber of Commerce for organizing this session. It's, in my view, a really timely session. It's simply because the importance of economic growth that we've been talking about from the beginning, and that economic growth in the digital economy is a critical question for today. Governments around the world and leaders around the world are asking the question about what are the right set of policies to help support economic growth. It's on top of agenda. And I think, while a lot of, policymakers and economists have done a lot of work in understanding the importance of innovation in driving economic growth, the role of intellectual property is less understood. In fact, in sometimes in the worst case scenario is that it's ignored, and the best case scenario is that there is contradiction and disagreement over the role of intellectual property in driving economic growth. So I think I'd like to emphasize from the perspective of the technology industry, but writ large, what the role that IP plays in what I like to call the democratization of invention. So, I think we all understand this idea that in the knowledge economy, one where, critical ideas are based on intangible assets now. 30, 40 years ago, the majority of the value from S&P 500 firms was based on tangible assets, physical and labor and capital. But today, most of the assets are based on intangible, ideas. So if firms aren't able to protect their ideas through regimes like intellectual property and make those ideas publicly available to everybody, they're basically going to be able to, they're going to have to do what I like to call, private provisioning of public goods. In other words, they'll basically protect their ideas through other mechanisms like, vertical integration or conglomerates. And that's what we are seeing in the US economy today. We are seeing as, IP and IP protection has weakened. We have seen a lot of vertical integration and large firms emerging. And what happens in this scenario is that only large firms will have the ability to innovate and be able to protect their ideas. And that helps nobody. That doesn't help, economic recovery, economic growth. That doesn't help the ecosystem where, 1,000 flowers can bloom. By the way, Patrick, I can't hear you at all. So this is the same problem as last time. If in case you were trying to chime in, I apologize. So let me just, go back to this theme from the perspective of a company that we at Qualcomm like to call ourselves the Bell Labs of wireless. We are the R&D arm of the wireless industry. We've spent, decades investing over 20% of our revenues to invest in 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, generations of wireless communications technologies that enable most of your devices today, with 5G being a game changer that is going to be designed to be a universal fabric of connectivity, connecting homes, hospitals, transportation, and more, factories. So if we didn't have the ability to invest in long-term R&D, the kind that Michelle talked about from the bio perspective, 10 plus years in advance, not knowing what those risks are going to, what ROI they're going to bear, those investments, we will absolutely not be able to deploy hundreds and thousands of engineers, 10, 15 plus years in advance, solving complex problems, building prototypes, going to international standards bodies and leading in these critical technologies and critical standards, not just from an economic development perspective, but also from a national security perspective. So that's just one case in point example of why IP is a real important driver of economic growth and other important considerations right now for the economy. And we really must avoid a world where if IP isn't protected, if IP isn't, it's not used as an incentive for small firms, for inventors, for anybody to innovate and contribute, we will ultimately end up in a regime where only other ways of protecting ideas like, conglomerates and vertical mergers, large centrally planned organizations will drive the innovation agenda. And we don't, I think it's fair to say that it won't be a market-based economy, and we won't be able to lead in that. So thank you again for doing this program, Patrick, and everybody else at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and GIPC. A really timely topic for economic growth, a really timely topic for innovation, and a really timely topic for understanding the links between intellectual property, driving innovation, driving economic growth for both creative industries, and biopharma and tech. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today, especially joined by my good friend and former colleague, Mitch Glazier, for our fireside chat, where we will be discussing the huge role that the film and music industry have within the broader creative ecosystem. I am Karen Temple, and I'm the Senior Executive Vice President and General Counsel of the Motion Picture Association, which is the leading voice and advocate of the film, television, and streaming industry around the globe. I previously served as the United States Register of Copyrights, where I worked for 9 years. And now I'll turn it over to my good friend, Mitch Glazier, to introduce himself briefly as well.
Karen, good to see you. Always good to be with you. I wish we were actually at a fireside right now. We'll have to make do. My name is Mitch Glazier. I'm the CEO of the Recording Industry Association of America. We represent the global music entertainment companies. And we work hand in glove with the Motion Picture Association on a ton of issues. And if there's one thing we've learned in the policy world, it's that even in what we do, there's an ecosystem, right, between the copyright industries to figure out how we can work together to achieve common goals. And so we've been talking over the past few weeks about how the copyright industries really are an ecosystem. I mean, we all have our own worlds, but we also have these worlds that depend on each other in order to produce great talent and to actually support production in a way that adds to our culture. And so, Karen, maybe you can start out by just telling us within the motion picture industry how that process works a little bit. Give us a little insight into your ecosystem.
Yeah, great. I think you described that really well, Mitch. First, I would say let's take a step back, and everyone can picture their local hair salon or restaurant, or even their local electrician or contractor. Now, expand that picture to each locality around the country. You'll end up picturing thousands upon thousands of small businesses, entrepreneurs, and workers of all levels. But when you think about it, that picture really mirrors the ecosystem we're working within the film and television industry. It's an ecosystem that has many, many more layers than just that top layer of celebrity actors you see in front of the camera. It's a much richer, I would say, and more vibrant landscape, even more so behind the camera. In fact, the film, television, and streaming industry support over 2 million jobs across all 50 states. So it's not just kind of local to Hollywood. These jobs are comprised of over 90,000 small businesses. And here I'm talking about businesses that are employing 10 people or less. And every single one of those businesses and workers supports the creation and production of film and television. And they are doing so in a really essential way. In terms of trying to bring about the story of the television or the film that's going to be online or streaming into your homes, from the concept or idea to the actual screen in your homes. So I would say that's a quick overview of the film, television, and streaming ecosystem. And I know that there are a lot of parallels to the music industry. And I think in a lot of ways we are deeply connected, as you mentioned, Mitch. I'm thinking recently of this just past Sunday at the Oscars, where there were awards for the best score and best song. So I would throw it back to you, Mitch, to tell us about the music ecosystem and how that might be similar or different than the film, television, and streaming ecosystem that I just described.
Yeah, you raised two really good points, which is that whenever you see a project or a story to life and you see that finished product, it's pretty easy to forget everybody who had to participate along the way to get there and how much investment and cooperation went in the back end. And then the second point you made is that it's consistently evolving, the types of stories that we're telling, who's telling them. And both of those are really important. In the music world, just like in the movie world, it's easy to think just about sort of the actor or the artist. But it starts with a lot of investment and a lot of risk taking and a lot of discovery. And then, within the music world, once you pair the record company with the artist, right? And that fit is put together to try and develop and create that artist and that, that story. Then you have the actual making of the record. So it's the session musician and the background vocalist and the producer and the audio engineer and all of those creative minds, each has its own sort of ecosystem on its own. And each of those workers has to come together in a studio or using other tools that are available now to create this magic that's going to be this recording. And you have to pair them with the right songwriter, right? It's like a script and then a movie, right? It has to flow together so that the recording makes that song come to life. And then you have a whole team that has to market that and promote it and work on the artist's, image, publicity, and fan engagement, and helps to get that story out there so that it can connect with people. And then you have to work with all the distribution services to make sure that whether or not it's a streaming company or satellite radio or a new app, that fans have an ability to get engaged in a way that's still going to connect them to that story. And so indie record companies, major record companies, all of the people involved on the creative side have to come together to sort of strike gold and make this magic occur in a way that still makes economic sense for everybody. So it is a very, very hard thing to do. But when it happens, it's probably one of the most important contributions to our economy because it also contributes to our culture. Yeah. Maybe we can talk a little bit now about how things actually get funded. Who brings this to the table? And it's one thing to have all these great creators out there, but it takes investment and money to make it work. How does that happen in the movie world?
Well, that's a great question, and it's really good to focus on how do we make it all happen? How does that magic that you discussed and described a little bit happen in the film industry? And I will say, in terms of financing, individual studios have different ways of actually financing individual movies. Some might self-finance, others might work with a group of investors. But one thing I think that it's really important to make clear is that there is one common, I think, factor, regardless of the way that you individually might finance a film, and that is the reliance on the IP system, as a focus, as a critical part, the key driver, so to speak, for the creative economy. We copyright lawyers like to say that, as the Supreme Court has said, that the copyright is the engine of free expression. So the IP system, it's just foundational to every aspect of our industry, from getting a project off the ground to protecting, that content once that project is, already made. Copyright establishes a framework for creators to actually see that return on their investment. And the reason they need to do that is so that they can continue to create and to make those great films and TV series that we all enjoy.
It was really, really awesome to do this. Next time, I hope it's actually next to a fire in person.
Exactly. But
Still
it's
in
been a
our
great
hands.
time. Always love chatting to you. Hopefully we weren't preaching too much to the choir by preaching to each other. But I think that these are all great, great important points for folks to think about, especially during World IP Day, and just the importance, and the focus on, small businesses. That's always, I think, something that's sometimes gets missed, and it's great to be able to highlight that aspect of our creative ecosystem.
True. Well, thank you, GIPC. Hope
Thank
everybody's
you.
doing great, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ana Delaval, and I'm the Director of Global Brand Relations at Amazon. In this role, I lead a team dedicated to working with brands, industry association to advance Amazon brand protection program and to gather the necessary feedback that we need to constantly improve. I would like to thank the U.S. Chamber GIPC for the opportunity to speak about Amazon work to protect consumer, brands, and selling partners from counterfeits. Amazon customer-centered philosophy guides and informs our commitment to preventing counterfeits. Counterfeits are a serious risk to our business. If customers do not trust what they purchase through Amazon store, we know they can and will shop elsewhere. Similarly, if small and medium-sized businesses do not feel safe selling in our store, we know they can and will sell elsewhere. That's why Amazon strictly prohibits the sale of counterfeit and constantly innovates to protect our customer and our brands. We rely on innovation. We focus on preventive technology-driven tools designed to proactively stop fraud and abuse before it affects our customers. In 2019, these proactive efforts blocked over 6 billion suspected bad listings from being published in our store and ensured that 99.9% of product the customer viewed on Amazon never received a complaint about a suspected counterfeit. That's why we've also developed industry-leading brand protection tools to empower brands to partner with us in this fight. Brand Registry offers access to a powerful set of tools that enables brand owners to accurately represent their products, detect and report IP violation, and proactively prevent infringement. Here are some of the innovation powered by Brand Registry. Automated brand protection, which uses information brands provide to proactively remove suspected infringing or inaccurate content. Report a violation, which allows right owners to search Amazon store for potentially infringing products and report suspected violation. Project Zero is a self-service tool that for the first time gives right owner the power to remove suspected counterfeit directly from Amazon store. We then use this data again to strengthen our automated protection and better catch potential counterfeit listing in the future and proactively. Transparency is a serialization service that provides participating brands unique codes for every unit of an enrolled product. These codes allow not only Amazon, but also other retailers, law enforcement, and customers to determine the authenticity of each individual unit, simply by scanning the codes with a mobile app. And last but not least is IP Accelerator, our new program that helps small businesses protect their IP. It connects brands with a curated network of trusted IP law firms that provide high-quality registration services at competitive rates. As I said, we're constantly innovating on behalf of our customer to ensure that we stop bad actors at the front door. We have a very thorough vetting system in place that use both human review and advanced machine learning technology. But last year, we also started piloting a program to verify a prospective seller identity in real time using a live interview over video. Seller meet with an Amazon representative who will verify their identity and assess the authenticity of the physical document the seller are required to provide. It's a high-touch experience that allows us to help honest entrepreneurs and small businesses that are trying to sell on Amazon for the first time, while making it even harder for bad actors to hide. We also decided to help customers make informed shopping decisions by increasing seller transparency and requiring every seller to display their business name and business address. This information is clearly available on every seller profile page in the US. In addition to better information sharing and constantly improving on our anti-counterfeiting tool and system, we need a real deterrent to keep bad actors from inventing new ways to conduct this abuse. That's why we need to hold the bad actor accountable. And in June of 2020, we launched the Counterfeit Crimes Unit, a global team of former federal prosecutor, experienced investigator, data analyst, and expert dedicated to pursuing bad actors and holding them accountable, including working with law enforcement and working with brands to file lawsuits against counterfeits. We worked with luxury brands like Valentino, Salvatore Ferragamo, and family and small business owner like the company Dutch Blitz. We also have seen increased abuse by this bad actor on the other side, and especially on social media. In November 2020, in fact, we decided to sue 13 individuals for advertising and promoting the sale of counterfeit luxury goods in our store. These bad actors were attempting to bypass our protection by listing generic products, but then promoting counterfeit luxury goods to their social media followers. Successfully stopping bad actors from infiltrating the global supply chain with counterfeit, we know requires the collaboration with all stakeholders, including retailers, marketplace, right owners, government agency, and law enforcement. And Amazon actively partners with these stakeholders to combat counterfeits. For example, this year, we began providing law enforcement and designated government entities in the United States and other countries with a quarterly report of confirmed counterfeiters that we have detected and blocked from our stores. It's a voluntary unilateral reporting that grew out of Amazon's close collaboration with the IPR Center and its effort to drive greater cooperation between law enforcement and the private industry. We believe this information sharing initiative will help law enforcement identify repeat bad actors, identify global trends, target bad actors across multiple channels and jurisdictions, and help drive more successful prosecution. The unfortunate reality is that bad actors will continue to work around the clock to try and engineer their ways around our defenses. That's why collaboration from all parties, including brands, law enforcement, marketplaces, and government, is so important to ensuring that we're working together to stay ahead of the game and stop counterfeits. Amazon welcomes the opportunity to work with any and all stakeholders who share the commitment to eradicating counterfeit. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today, and thank you.
Thanks, Anna. I'm back. Patrick Kilbride here with you, and I've got with me the three experts who moderated the first three events in our system, exploring ecosystems for innovation, creativity, and craftsmanship. From the Bayer Corporation, we've got GIPC's chairman, Ray Cairns. We've got Danny Marti of Relics, who's GIPC's vice chair, and we've got Bob Pearson, our communications guru with the Next Practices Group, who covered our craftsmanship agenda. And Bob, the first sort of common thread that struck me from these conversations over the last several weeks and again today is how these ecosystems all begin with investments in human capital development.
Yeah, I mean, Patrick, we found that to be a fascinating part of our panel because you don't always think of it as intellectual property as unlocking entrepreneurs, but that's really what's going on. So if you took like Drew Goodillion he's an innovator in creating new craft bicycles, really amazing bicycles. But he doesn't have time he doesn't have a whole legal department here to follow him around. So he needs to trust in the system. But then you go to Stacy Gifford from IBM, who's looking at how to use artificial intelligence to improve how we do carbon capture and storage. They need to trust in the system to know that they can go full speed and move ahead. And so that was really cool how IP is unlocking entrepreneurs in many ways, we found.
I think that's proven to be the same across a number of these different industry sectors.
Yeah, Patrick, this is Danny. I'd love to jump in, and I'm glad we're doing this and focusing on the common threads. I mean, the story of innovation and creativity in society, culturally and economically, is all about human capital. In the creativity session that I moderated about 2 weeks ago, my panelists from the film and television, music, and video game sectors explained the central role of human capital in terms of their business. Right? Creative outputs like a song or a movie or a video game don't just happen. They involve a high degree of personal sacrifice and artistic commitment. Our panelists talked about the years and years of investments in people. We heard some of it earlier this session, as well as investments in our own communities to create this vibrant ecosystem. Our panelist in my session, Ruth Vitale, that we also heard earlier today, explained that it literally takes a village to produce a film, right? Beyond the headline actor, any given film may employ directly or indirectly thousands of people. You think writers and composers, graphic artists, engineers, prop designers. I mean, everything from carpenters and electricians building sets to casting crews, location scouts, costume designers, everything from drivers to caterers, hairstylists, and on and on. We heard Karen Temple mention that in the US alone, more than 2 million people work just in the film and television sector, and that this sector pays out about $180 billion in wages each and every year. All of this, we learned, requires sustainable and effective business models to translate an idea, a song, a story from concept to a marketable finished product.
You know, Ray, that's kind of the second common thread I think we see here is that this pathway or life cycle pattern for innovation looks so much like the one we see in these creative sectors. What does that look like in your industry space?
Well, it's interesting, you know, the biopharmaceutical sector, you think about the amount of man hours and education that is put in to become a researcher, become someone who would actually look at innovate and find a new medicine or vaccine that's going to help us live happier, longer lives. You know, our session talked a lot about public-private partnership. Government gets together with academia, universities, and gets together with corporations. We're stronger together than we are separate. We're greater as the sum than we are individual parts. And so we talked a lot about how the collaboration between these three important entities within the ecosystem and how important it is for us to look towards the future. And again, this is something that we see at Bear all the time, our ability to partner with others outside to find the answers to some of the world's toughest challenges. So our session was really strong in that regard.
You know, we had Dr. Michelle, the president of the Biotechnology Innovation Organization, on earlier, and Bio has tracked the partnerships behind vaccine and therapeutic development, manufacturing, and distribution around the world. They've tracked more than 275 distinct industry-to-industry partnerships that together are driving production of, you know, life-saving vaccines and therapies. And it really is an amazing testament to the power of IP to connect stakeholders, you know, give them a basis to work together. You know, and the third thread, just in wrapping up here, that you know is this one on intellectual property, and you know, a couple of our guests earlier today spoke about this. Where does the funding come from? Well, I think we heard that whether it's copyright or trademark or patents, that this is the key to investors being able to allocate resources to really long-term and high-risk activities. And I'll say, I want to first thank the three of you. You've been leaders on the GIPC board. You've been leaders over the last few weeks in helping us to explore this ecosystem space. It's never been more timely, and I want to just give a lot of credit to you for leading a conversation that's going to help a lot of people around the world understand how life-saving products, creative works, the really high quality craftsmanship that we all rely on, reach people, reach markets. And with that, we'll close the session and really congratulate all of you and thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick.
Wonderful. Thank you.